Hey everybody, this is my 55-gallon T Bar tank. Well, it was my 55-gallon T Bar tank. Unfortunately, I came down this morning and the T Bar is no more. I looked around and looked and looked, and eventually I was able to finally locate it when I decided to check the filter intake. If you'll notice, the filter intake is back behind all that Anubias, so I really wasn't able to see it, but I was able to reach down there and feel for it, and was unpleasantly not surprised, I guess, to find the remains of my T-bar stuck up against the intake filter. So I have no idea what happened to it. I'm kind of chalking it up to old age. And now, old age does not necessarily mean it lived to the full extent of its possible lifespan. Over the years of having me do, inappropriate water changes or whatever, who knows what kind of stress I put it over, which may have shortened its lifespan, or what kind of genetics may have shortened its lifespan. But it didn't really seem to have any particular illness. It just kept fading away, and it got duller and duller, and its colors got more and more faded out. And eventually it got to the point where I was beginning to get concerned about it, and I even mentioned in a video that its behavior was becoming a bit lethargic, and eventually from that it led to those sort of lesions on the side, and at that point it was just a matter of days before it died. So I did run a full cycle of the general cure through the tank, not knowing what issue I was dealing with. It's hard to pick a medication to put in the tank when you're really just guessing at what's wrong. And so I did run the general cure through, and I got no real impact from that. So I will be doing a water change to get the medication out of the tank. It did, I did do both 48-hour cycles, so it did get a full treatment. So I will be changing the filter out. I'll put some carbon in there, and again, we'll talk about the carbon in the filter and why we put carbon in our filters and so on and so forth. I also wanted to address my angelfish down here. A lot of people suggested that my angelfish had ick, and it does not. There are a few spots in the fins. If it turns a certain way, the light catches it a certain way, you'll get little glints of iridescence that I guess can be mistaken for spots, especially if you're already sort of on high alert that something's going on in the tank or something, and maybe those little spots got people concerned that it was ick or something like that. But this tank has not been exposed to ick. None of the fish in here are exhibiting any of the behaviors of having any kind of ick. I don't see any spots on any of the fish. I don't see any significant flashing. I do want to point out once again that fish do flash as part of their normal behavior, the same way you or I might scratch our arm. Just because someone scratches their arm does not mean they have, they're riddled with parasites. It just means they had an itch and they scratched their arm. So fish will flash occasionally. You will see them rub up against stuff. I find that they do it most frequently around feeding time. I don't know if they're trying to scrape up, sort of disturb the sort of off walks in that little microcosm that lives on the, or a little micro ecosystem that lives on the surface of things, or what they're doing. But I see the fish flash a lot during feeding time, and then the behavior stops right after feeding time. So it's got nothing to do with having any kind of skin parasites or anything like that. So for anybody that did mention that my angelfish flashed in that one particular video, that's not unusual to see fish do that from time to time, but as you can see, it's not flashing, it's not doing it excessively, it's not rubbing up against everything it can find. The other fish in here are not flashing or exhibiting any kind of distressed behavior. So again, there's just no concern really about ick being in this tank. So, moving on, I did shoot a video about all of these yesterday, but since some fish have died, there's no point really in doing that video. I did find a dead crayfish in this tank yesterday. That was part of the other video that I'm not going to bother to upload because we've moved on since then. But I did find a dead crayfish in here, and this morning when I came down, I found my Chinese algae eater all bloated and floating on the surface. Now, I know it seems like I got all kinds of stuff going on and there's some kind of catastrophe going on, but oddly, all of this stuff is unrelated. What I'm treating the tank for and why the tank looks green right now, I'm fully aware of what that was and where it came from, how I got it in the tank. That was Freshwater Velvet. I'm pretty sure of that now. And I got it simply by catching a bunch of wild minnows down the street in my local stream and bringing them back and throwing them in the tank without quarantine. When I did that, I was already having issues with my Chinese algae eater. I don't know what was going on with it, but it was getting really bloated up. It was getting fatter and fatter, and I was starting to get a little bit of the pine cone effect. Its eyes were bulged out, and so I really didn't expect that one to be around too much longer anyway. And so while I'm medicating the tank for the velvet, which is now complete, that medication has run its course, and my fish look good. I'm ready to go ahead and start getting this out of the tank as well. So again, we're going to be adding carbon to the filter and doing a big water change. Again, look forward to more video of that coming up in the near future. But my treatment for the velvet appears to have been successful. I don't see any spots on any of the fish. I don't see the excessive flashing behavior that I was getting from all those minnows. I mean, they were going nuts. So all of that stopped. The minnows were beginning to, the shiners were beginning to dart and dash around the tank, almost like they were in distress as well. And it was like flashing taken to the next level. It was like they were trying to get out of the tank by simply swimming out through the end of the tank. And I did lose one of them. I did have 3 of the big shiners in here, and one of them jumped out of the tank during all of that. But that kind of behavior is completely calmed down. They don't seem to be stressed out by my presence as they were when they were suffering from it. So all's well that ends well with that. Unfortunately, I did lose a few things. As far as the crayfish go, I'm not sure what is going on with the crayfish. I should have 3 of them in there, but 1 died, and so now I don't know if I've still got 2 that are still alive. I had only ever seen 1 at a time since I put them in there, so I don't know if maybe the other 2 have already gotten out and I'm going to find some dried up crayfish somewhere in the corner one of these days or what. But I have not seen hide nor hair of the other 2 crayfish since I put them in there. I've only seen that 1, and we now know that that 1 is definitely dead. I took it out of the tank and chucked it down into the woods this morning so it wouldn't stink up the trash can. So I don't know if we got any crayfish in there or not. I may try to get out one more time and throw the minnow trap out. Again, throwing the dice. If I go do that again, it's entirely likely that I could be bringing parasites back to the tank again. So, I know that's a risk. I knew that was a risk when I set this tank up years ago. I've discussed it a million times since then. That's just one of the things you put up with when you're going to fiddle around with the fish tank the way I do. So, no big deal. We got it treated. Probably a little more expensive than it would have been had I done it in a quarantine tank. Treating a 125-gallon tank is a lot more expensive, a lot more meds involved than treating a 10-gallon tank. So keep that in mind. If you adopt my attitude towards quarantining and saying, I'll just, use the whole tank as a quarantine tank, and if I have to treat it, I can just treat everybody. Well, that's fine, but keep in mind, you've got to treat 125 gallons rather than 10 gallons. So that is something to consider when taking that point of view. So anyway, I'm going to wrap that up. I got some work to do. I want to get started on working on some of these tanks tonight, getting them cleared out, getting some fresh water put back in there. So I'm going to say thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. Don't forget this one here, of course, is my 125-gallon native tank. So thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.